Good day, and thank you for joining the Boston Online High School channel. As more and more school learners move away from the traditional sense of schooling to more distance and e-learning, the need for online extracurricular activities and clubs increase. Providing school learners with healthy alternatives with which to spend their free time, such as extracurricular activities, will have a positive impact on their emotional, social, and mental growth. In today's discussion, guest speaker Tim Zunckel, who heads up the radio station at Boston Media House in Sandton, will be sharing his knowledge around the importance of providing our youth with healthier online alternatives with which to spend their time. So thank you so much for joining us today, Tim.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much, Amara.
Great. My first question for you today is, would you say that extracurricular activities are in fact beneficial to students? If so, how?
You know, I always look at myself as a good example. I was a terrible academic at school. In fact, I'm still a terrible academic. But school was almost one of those places that by default you went to do other things. And I think the challenge with youth of today is that environments have changed.
Yes.
And specifically in the last 20 to 24 months, with a lot of things going online, the sociability of being in a classroom has changed dramatically. But there's also huge benefits to that. The quality of education changes. We get access to a variety of skills that we never had when you're in a small school, in a neighborhood, or things like that. But it removes one from that environment where you can connect with your peers or people in your grade or in the bigger school. So I think that sociability and the ability for children to have extramurals is so important, because what it does is it connects you with a community of other kids who are interested in something that you're passionate about. If it's a photography club or journalism or radio or listening to music, absolutely, I think there's a huge need for that. And the other thing is the youth are under huge amounts of pressure.
Yes,
parents are putting pressure on people. Online has put pressure on us. Let's talk about the last 12 years of social media and what that means to the youth. So that ability just to do something which you enjoy, where there's no need to be like the best of the best, but just involved in something which you enjoy doing, which takes your mind off. I think it's invaluable.
Definitely. So would you agree with me that some of the benefits include, it gives the students a productive break, in a sense, from all the academic pressures of life, and almost retunes their brain and gives them basically refreshes their brain in a sense? Absolutely.
I mean, I think, as it is with adults, as it is with teenagers and the youth. I mean, if you think about your own work day, that ability of sitting behind a PC for 5 or 6 hours and having to deliver, when you step out and you either go and do your exercise or you go to a book club or whatever the things that it's doing, it just takes your mind off the issues at hand, and it lets you escape to a different place. So there's no doubt that the extracurricular environment is important, in a holistic sense of being a student.
Definitely, and I think we can also agree that it's a healthy alternative because it can also look good on a student's resume one day. It builds on their social skills and hard skills as well. Would you agree?
It definitely does that, depending what you do, obviously. And the thing is, very often you go to get a piece of paper, so it's a matric or something like that. But what you mentioned is so key, because what about the soft skill? When you are interacting and engaging with other students, you learn a little bit about EQ and IQ between different people. Depending on what extracurricular activity you're doing, you get some insight into that industry, you build up a little bit of knowledge. It potentially changes your outlook on what things are. So it's part of the education process, but it's not necessarily the formalized education process where there's tests involved. And I think that's also the nice thing with an extracurricular environment, is that, especially in the online space, is we've removed the competition element. I was never a particularly good cricket player, but I enjoyed throwing a ball. But as soon as you have to play second team cricket, they put you under pressure to win, or scoring 10 runs wasn't enough. Online gives us a different thing. So they're like, come and participate. Do a cool thing with us. No one's going to judge you on what the output is. We're interested that you're participating.
Yes.
And I think that's the nice thing with the
Yes.
space that we're currently in.
Yes, and it creates a safe environment for students to really bring out that creativity that's
And I think
budding within them.
I think that's hugely important because, you know, you speak about safe environments. So much of what we're exposed to these days isn't safe, whether it be, you know, in a physical space or in an online space.
Yeah.
You're currently, you know, there's always these pressures and, you know, who else is there? And
Yes.
have we got parental controls, you know, all these kinds of
Yeah.
things. Whereas when we have this online space curated by ourselves for our students to participate in, we already know that it's a safe space. We've got great people with great skills sharing and you know, engaging with students. And it then just gives them the opportunity to immerse themselves in something which isn't necessarily academic in nature, but grows them in a different way.
Definitely. So as more and more students move, you know, to e-learning, can you give us an example as to how we can provide extracurricular clubs online and accommodate this digital movement?
You know, I think with the fourth industrial revolution, we've already spoken about the last 20 months and what COVID has done to us, and connectivity with students, you know, from a mobile perspective or laptops and tablets and these kinds of things. Technology it's part of who we are. It's an extension of our being in any environment, whether it be a work environment or a school environment or even a social environment. You know, so this concept of having online clubs is just an extension of what we currently do.
Definitely.
And what that gives us an opportunity is to use the technology to enhance things. You know, so previously a radio station, for instance, if you weren't in Sandton and you were a student in Pretoria or Durban or somewhere else, you couldn't participate in the radio activity. Being online gives us an opportunity to link those people in and to have a very similar experience to where the main facility in Sandton is. And that's hugely important. It gives us access to people who previously, if you wanted to get them to come and share knowledge or engage or, you know, just be around students, you'd have to, at great expense, fly them, put them up, collect them from the airport. You don't have to do that anymore. There's more flexibility.
Definitely.
People have the opportunity to engage and interact in these different ways, and it's just become so much easier to connect. I think the important thing, though, is that we must understand that online is not necessarily disengaged. Just because we're not in a physical space together doesn't mean that there can't be a connection between what the student is doing and the activity, or the person giving that space. So I just think online creates so much opportunity, which we haven't even started to untap.
And flexibility.
Absolutely.
Definitely. I know you are actually really accommodating students with this, you know, this new digital movement with your Boston Radio Hour Club, your Boston Online High School Radio Hour Club. Can you tell us a little bit more about this club?
So the Boston Radio Club is specifically designed for students who are passionate about technology. So we've ticked the first box. And then the other thing we know about youthful South Africans is they love music. And they love talking to each other about their own issues. So what the BMH Radio Club does, it basically brings those three factors together and creates a space where if you're into technology, you're into music, and you're into engaging with people of your own age and sharing those thoughts and ideas, it brings that all together. And what we do is, as part of the bigger BMH Radio picture, where we cater for a variety of students for Media House and City Campus, the BMH Radio Hour has specifically been designed for Boston High School, for students involved in the high school to be able to engage and interact with each other live on the radio on a daily basis. So, I mean, that's really where we're coming from that. And what we know about radio is that it's trusted. So it creates a trusted community of people who have this opportunity to really engage and share with each other.
Definitely. So how is the course presented?
So we've developed the curriculum to be totally online. Radio is a very hands-on kind of thing. I mean, that's just the reality of radio and television, is that there is a studio, there's a place where everything comes together, and there's people touching buttons and the like. But what we've done is we've simulated that experience online, because before you can get to that space, kind of like driving a car, you need to know one or two of the basic things. And students are probably closer to being radio and TV people than they actually realize. Technology has allowed that. If you've got a cell phone, you're basically a content creator. If you've got a YouTube channel or an Instagram
Yes.
handle, you already immersed yourself in the nuts and bolts and the essence of what radio is. So what we also know
definitely.
is that these technology platforms have removed a great deal of having to have a physical space and a studio. So what we're trying to do is acknowledge the fact that we still need to have some physical spaces, but use technology and gadgets in a way that people who are in the field and as practitioners are using those tools as well. And that's how we're trying to stimulate these conversations.
Definitely, great. And would you say that learners hone any specific skills by taking part in this online club?
I think one of the major things that radio does for you is that it teaches you to speak in public. And that's a skill. It doesn't matter if you're going to be in a client-facing environment, but in your life, you're going to have to engage with people who you've never spoken to before. It's not in a safe space, and sometimes it's a little bit intimidating. But radio allows you to build that confidence. You learn a few tips and tricks, how to do it, and you overcome that fear of having to speak in public.
Yes.
And what we know is the online environment has kind of removed that because you can't always see all the people. But the radio environment re-injects that live feeling into things. So I think one of the major takeouts from, for instance, joining the radio club is that ability just to enhance your public speaking. That's the one thing. The other thing that the radio club is really good at is radio is about an art and a science. And very often, extracurricular activity is about one or the other. You know, if you're into art or if you're into, creating stuff, if you've got a scientific brain, radio brings both of those things together. So you can be quite logical and structured, but at the same time, you can be out of the box, you can be thinking in different colors and sounds and creative, and it all comes together in one product at the end. And I think that's a really great space to be in.
Okay, wow, that sounds amazing. And lastly, I want to ask you, can you give students listening some tips on how to start their radio presenting career?
I think the big thing with anything really is stop talking about it and just do it. So if you're passionate about being a radio person, or if you're passionate about writing or taking photographs, take the first picture. If you want to be a radio person, get on your phone, get to voice notes or the recording function and record stuff. Record your conversations. Record dinner time with your parents and your siblings.
Definitely.
And accept and acknowledge that that's the first step in creating content. Radio is just a platform for audio, but it's about the content. So it's about the unique thoughts and ideas that you're having, and how do you get those things to come alive. So I would say if you're keen on becoming a radio person, just go and do the first thing. Doesn't matter how good or bad it is, it will always get better.
Definitely. So I think our take from this today is just stop talking and do whatever you're passionate about, and hopefully and should succeed one day in that.
That's it.
Definitely.
That's it.
Tim, it was such a pleasure to talk to you today. So thank you so much for being on the show, and thank you to all those listening and watching today. Take care. Goodbye.